The shore of a small lake in northern Ontario, known as Larder Lake, hosts an unusual aggregation of large boulders, which have become locally known as the Stonehenge of northeastern Ontario. According to studies conducted by several archaeologists, the boulders are glacial erratics of various compositions that don't fit into the landscape. The shore of Pearl Beach on which these boulders are aggregated is a stretch of flat bedrock, overgrown in some parts with evergreen trees and brush. It's quite obvious that the boulders do not fit in here naturally. Larder Lake is one of more than 250,000 lakes that are scattered all over the province of Ontario. The area has a small local population of 750 people. Pearl Beach was home to Indigenous Canadian populations of Ojibwe people from post-glacial times as far back as 6000 BCE. In fact, 14 other such stone sites have been identified on various other shores of Larder Lake. Here I am arriving at the site of Stonehenge of Northern Ontario, as it is also affectionately known by the locals here, and people here seem to be well aware of this site. But it's quite hidden. Getting here was very difficult. It's a very offbeat road, not paved, hard to get to on the lake shore of Lake Larder, which is just behind these trees. So here we find a bunch of erratic large boulders that don't belong to the landscape. As you can see, the ground is actually a kind of flat rock, exposed bedrock, and these rocks were analyzed for their substances, and they're kind of come from different places, and they don't belong to this landscape. Now, as I've found, somebody placed this little boulder here, and I think this marks the center of the circle. So from here, using the compass, if we look at this big triangular rock, this one happens to align precisely north on the compass with its point pointing north. So that's very strange. Now, I'm going to start moving clockwise to show you the alignments. So the next one is 60 degrees northeast, which is just hidden in the brush here. Then moving on from that, I'm gonna have to walk a little bit to show you. There's another one hidden here in the brush, actually two of them, you can see here. The first one on the left happens to align exactly 90 degrees east. So exactly east from that little rock where I was standing. And the big one behind is 120 degrees southeast. Now I'm going to go back to the center circle here. Continuing on from the center circle, the next one is this boulder, which is 150 degrees southeast. Now this one is kind of an anomaly because there really should be one that aligns with the north more, so it should be at 180. I don't know if this was some kind of an anomaly or because it's a smaller boulder, maybe moved over time, who knows. And then as we continue, the next one is 240 southwest, which is right there, and the one beside it is 270 west, which is directly due west. And then finally, completing the circle, we have this big one here, which is 300 northwest. And these are all very exact angles if I stand from this little stone here in the center. And then we come back to the north one. As this diagram makes clear again, the triangular faced rock points to compass north. 6 further boulders are positioned at exactly 60, 90, 120, 240, 270, and 300 degrees, marking a common pattern of the solstice wheel. These angles were determined by pointing the compass directly to the center of each boulder. A small stone placed in the middle of the circle marks the exact center circle position. The site is actually said to contain 18 boulders, which means about 10 more must be hidden further out in the forest around the circle. One anomalous small boulder also stands at 150 degrees, while the direct south-facing stone at 180 degrees, which would complete the north-south line, is missing. Perhaps instead of a stone, this south position held some kind of a communal teepee for the site. In the cold climate of northern Ontario, it may have been important to orient dwellings to the south in the winter in order to increase the exposure to the sun. Calculating the sunrise and sunset angles for both the summer and winter solstices, we get the more accurate angles of 52, 125, 234, and 307 degrees. This slight deviation from the stone placements may have been accounted by the stones being placed as odd estimates to the rising and setting sun, rather than accurate mathematical determinations. Unlike the more open fields of the Salisbury Plain, of sites like the English Stonehenge, because this area is surrounded by tall trees, the horizon itself is obscured. The exact angles of the sun over the horizon may not have been directly visible within the forest. One other small thing to note is that the north stone also shows a few degrees of wobble away from the exact magnetic north, as shown by the compass, which could perhaps indicate the accounted difference between the polar and magnetic north. It is unclear how prehistoric Ojibwe people could have been aware of this distinction. Just a few miles down the road, straddling the border of the provinces of Ontario and Quebec, stands a small butte known as Cheminées Mountain, or Mont Chadron. It starkly stands out from the rest of the landscape and may have held great spiritual reverence to the early Ojibwe cultures that resided in this area. One theory is that dole stones or boulder alignments, such as the one shown here, were built on special spots, known as power snares, that could capture helpful energies and spirits. However, the geometrical analysis presented in this video also demonstrates that archaeoastronomy could have been the reason behind these formations, specifically the structure of the solstice sun wheel.